Hello and welcome to Off With Their Headlines. I am your co-host, Amanda Matta, and I am joined by the lovely, her presence is a present, Meredith Constant, as always.
My.
Did you like that?
I'm blushing.
If this is your first time joining the podcast, welcome. We are two gals who were brought together by royal commentary, but that's not all we do. This is media commentary, news, current events, 4 days later podcast.
It's a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything for your, weekly conversation. So Meredith, how are you doing today? It's a Monday as we're recording this.
Listen, daylight savings has been rough. It's rough on the children. It's rough on the animals. I was dragging children by their legs by their pigtails. I was twirling them like the Trunch Bowl, just trying to get us out the door this morning. But then you reminded me of something, that there's reason for joy this Monday.
There is.
Because it's a special day. For all the Ed stands, I
don't know how many there are, aside from you.
Because today marks Prince Edward's 61st year on this planet. Ed, Eddie, Ward, whatever you want to call him, Bay.
Okay.
It's his birthday, and we should acknowledge him because, as everyone knows, he spoke to a tortoise named Jonathan, who may or may not have radicalized him. He took a meeting, a royal engagement. Look at the circular. And he told a bunch of female doctors and nurses that men were ruining the world. It is like the most, I'm going to argue right now, and I don't really have a lot of backing on this, that might be one of the most feminist things that have happened in the monarchy, the most feminist ally thing that has happened in the monarchy in a very long time. It was Prince Edward being like, yo, men, am I right? Am I right?
After conferring with a 193-year-old tortoise this year.
And then basically they took the cane and just dragged him off stage. And the royal family, the firm, said, you're going to be a little under the weather for a couple of months until you learn how to behave. And I love this. I love this for him. Happy birthday, Eddie. 4 days late.
This week. Yeah.
Might be your biggest fan. And he loves reality TV because he tried to make that Royals reality show. I mean, inspired.
Okay, so that's something I do want to do on the Patreon at some point, is watch the Royals. I don't know if it's so much a reality show as just a competition. It's a Royal Knockout. I think that's on the list. So speaking of Patreon, if you would like bonus content every month, as well as video episodes right when the weekly episodes air, you can hop over to Patreon to get those little perks. We also have a tier where you just get early and ad-free episodes, or you can join as a free patron to weigh in when we release mailbag episodes. The first one of those is coming very soon as it comes out of editing purgatory on my computer.
Listen, it's been a week. And the other thing we wanted to mention is that Patreon and Apple's doing some shady things. So what they have done right now is that there is a percentage hike with the Patreon app through Apple. So Apple has instated a mandatory 30% App Store fee that applies to all in-app purchases, meaning you're going to see higher prices with Patreon through the iOS app. That doesn't mean that you should cancel. What you should do, go and subscribe through Patreon's website. Go through the website. This will eliminate the Apple fee. It's just the way of signing up. And we would prefer not to automatically increase prices to offset the cost, because that's an option, is to do that because we lose 30%. But we don't want to do that. We know times are tough. We want to make this as affordable as possible. So we're just encouraging everyone to sign up through the Patreon website and not do it through the App Store if you are an Apple phone user.
I'm pretty sure you can just put the Patreon link in your web browser, Safari or Chrome or whatever, on your phone and do it that way. It's purely the App Store fee that is what we're talking about here.
Don't buy through the App Store. Get it through the website.
So we are
not looking to raise prices. There are some people that are going to raise prices automatically just to offset the cost, but we're not looking to do that. So just, sign up that way.
Yeah, that's our little way of creating joy and combating capitalism this week. But speaking of creating joy,
it's basically our flower petals in ice cubes moment. We are creating joy this week.
Now, speaking of creating joy, I'm not going to take this where you think I'm taking it. I'm going to talk about King Charles because he is also creating joy. We will be discussing With Love, Meghan. We mentioned it last week. Again, we were recording last week before the show dropped, but safe to say now, a week later, we have watched it and I love it. Meredith, how about you?
I find it so soothing. The night of the State of the Union, I said, I'm not in a state to hear about this union. And I just watched With Love, Meghan, and I just felt my heart rate settle. It's so calming. I started writing down ideas of things I could do with the kids. It's a lovely show. It's not what I expected, but I don't know what I expected. So I can't wait to talk about that. And then we'll have an extended conversation for Patreon. So we'll talk about it a little bit here. The extended cut, the director's edition. The director's cut will be over on Patreon.
The 6-hour Zack Snyder cut of the conversation. Yeah. So put a pin in Meghan. I want to talk about another royal who is creating joy to lead this episode, because this week we celebrate Commonwealth Day. Well, we don't, but the British royal family celebrates Commonwealth Day, which is an acknowledgement of all of the nations who are part of, aptly enough, the Commonwealth. King Charles did something a little interesting ahead of Commonwealth Day this year. There were a lot of teasers on social media for something that we now know is called the King's Music Room, which is an Apple Music radio show partnership. So, corporate partnership to create joy. Okay, if King Charles does it, not if Meghan is doing it.
I was thinking about that. I was like, okay, so this is okay. Well, he's probably not making money. Okay, but he also doesn't need to because of the duchies. No, that's just he should be allowed to have that. Well, why? Sorry, I just had a whole conversation with
you absolutely
British
you
person
probably cut about
this.
10 minutes out of our recording time with that little rant. Yeah, so it's a radio show on Apple Podcasts, which I don't listen to Apple Music. I use Spotify. So they did get me to activate a free trial that came with a new device to listen to this. It's delightful, I will say. It seems like there will be episodes thematically linking all of these songs, but all of the music will be from around the Commonwealth, including artists stretching from 1930s crooners to Afrobeats stars, as well as disco divas and reggae icons.
I'm just imagining just a disco diva coming on, and Charles is like,
diva.
This is my bull.
He literally almost says that about Kylie Minogue in the one little snippet. He goes, it's music for dancing.
Yes, Charles.
Episode 1 is Songs Which Have Brought Me Joy. The playlist here includes Bob Marley's Could You Be Loved, The Locomotion by Kylie Minogue, and Beyonce and Jay-Z, Crazy in Love. So I'm going to play you a little snippet here. You might be wondering, too, how is Beyonce considered part of the Commonwealth? She's not. King Charles is also using this radio show. As I was listening, I was like, oh, I see what's going on here. He's promoting the King's Trust and the work that does across the Commonwealth.
Okay.
And Beyonce has partnered with the King's Trust. So let me play you a little snippet.
From Buckingham Palace, His Majesty King Charles III shares a selection of his favourite songs.
Get it, Charlie.
So, okay, that's the intro to the whole thing.
The King's Music Room. That should be our open.
So this is His Majesty King Charles III on Beyonce.
The renamed King's Trust UK will reach its 50th anniversary next year. I wanted to include an iconic musical moment from the many events which have supported my Trust's work for young people over all these years. Here is one of the Trust's most faithful supporters, the incomparable Beyonce, with the song Crazy in Love. And incidentally, I would like to congratulate for winning her first Album of the Year Grammy.
Isn't that remarkable?
I could not. So you told me beforehand the way Charles pronounces Beyonce is perfect, and I could not have guessed that.
No,
I could not have guessed that.
The incomparable Beyonce. Yeah, truly remarkable. If you have Apple Music, why not listen to it? We all could use a little joy.
I have a hot take. I actually think this was a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I feel like the demographic of people that have Apple Music is, I'm like, look at me shading, but I feel like this is probably a good outlet for this. And it not only allows them to basically be like, oh, what did Barack Obama do? That young whippersnapper. Oh, we'll do the music too. But he's tying it into the Commonwealth, and he's tying it into the King's Trust. And the Prince's Trust, while not, there's certainly, been scandals and issues over the year. That is something that's commonly looked at as like, yeah, that was there was some good work done and outreach done, bringing that back to the forefront, renaming it and using this platform to talk about the work. Say. Genius.
And renaming it too, like just to get over any confusion, because it used to be the Prince's Trust. And
yes,
there was some conversation when Prince William became Prince of Wales. Is he going to inherit the Prince's Trust? No, Charles renamed it and took it with him. So I love this project. I think it's a little ironic, though, that, you know, it's the commentary around it that is so ironic, saying that Meghan is a devil for invoking joy. But here's Charles, like, doing an old school radio show. But there's also something like very Barack Obama-esque about it, because he's ostensibly curating this playlist. Do I think that King Charles sat down and like picked all of these songs? No. Do I think that Crazy in Love is necessarily one of his favorite songs? No. But
I would like to pretend that he walks around with a servant behind him with a phonograph playing Beyonce's Crazy in Love.
The man doesn't have a cell phone.
He doesn't have a cell phone.
He doesn't know what an Apple Music is, okay?
Someone sat him down and told him about it. It's very much a music radio show, harkening back to a different time, inviting you to learn a little more about the king and humanize him. It's just like, not everything, these people don't exist to one up or cut down the other at all times.
No, and I do think, if anything, the influence is coming from the broad strokes of using social media. And all week last week, there were teasers about this, and people were like, ooh, what's coming? Because the little on-air sign got flipped on in a video, and then it was the King's Guard playing the Bob Marley tune, which just is a bop. It's just so good.
So good.
So I think, if anything, the influence comes from modernizing how these messages get out. You know, it's not a radio show, it's an Apple radio show, which is really more like a podcast or a playlist with commentary interspersed. So
it's a little more modern. It's going back to some of like the Queen's, you know, the radio addresses, and bringing some of that history through. Also, it gives people an opportunity to see Charles a lot more.
Yes.
A lot more. Even though it's scripted, you see him. And this is a man who has been undergoing cancer treatment. And I think that also probably brings a little more confidence to the fact that Charles is not, you know, on his way out anytime soon, perhaps.
It is sort of a slowing down and a reclaiming of where the monarchy is now. You know, we'll talk about, we're in such a rush to skip over Charles in a lot of these conversations about the monarchy, but there is something charming of just picturing him. It was recorded at his desk in Buckingham Palace, and there's a part where he's like, I just want, it just makes me want to dance. And all he does is like some little finger taps on the desk. And it's like, that's charming and cute. And that's just who Charles, I think, is at his core at the end of the day. I like it for a reflection of where the monarchy is now. It's a good mix of looking ahead, but also staying true to their roots in a way.
No, I agree. I think it feels authentic to them in a way that the Catherine William video with the soft lens and the Twilight-esque, did not feel like them. You know, I think there was a way for them to do that video that felt like them. This feels like Charles. Like, if you saw Charles out with like a little handheld mic, like a TikToker, you know, I'm calling us out, and he's like just walking around being like, oh
like
my
Billy
God,
on the street style.
Listen to this bop. You know, it would be like, what are you doing, sir?
Yeah, exactly. So with Commonwealth Day being this week, that is typically marked by a service at Westminster Abbey. And I wanted to focus on a specific article about this service today for a new / adjacent segment called Framed, which we are going to be kicking off today. This is going to be not as in-depth of media analysis as burying the lead, but we just want to look at what's being put out in these headlines more than anything. So this is an article from Tatler about the Commonwealth Day service today. The article itself is very like a rundown of the program. Who's going to be there? What are they doing? Which organizations are being highlighted? But the headline, a royal return. The Princess of Wales will lead the celebrations for Commonwealth Day at Westminster Abbey after missing last year's event amidst her cancer battle. So, yes, but also, you know who else missed last year's Commonwealth Day because of a cancer battle? King Charles III.
Oh, right. Yes.
Right, that guy.
Famously.
I just found it so funny. A royal return, the Princess of Wales will lead the celebrations. I don't think that word means what the editors at Tatler want it to mean in this context. Because words do still have meaning.
They do. And the first sentence is about all we really get about the Princess of Wales. And it just says, the Princess of Wales and King Charles will lead the nation in celebrating Commonwealth Day with a service, blah, 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 blah. Will lead the nation. And it's like, so just because they're there or because she's playing some huge role which doesn't make sense as a woman who married into the royal family and is the Princess of Wales right now?
Yeah, it speaks volumes about the perception of the monarchy and who is a power player in terms of the monarchy's image more than anything. So yes, in terms of getting clicks for this event and getting pictures spread around, absolutely, Kate is leading. But she's not leading the celebration. She's not leading the nation. King Charles, the monarch, will be doing that. If he wasn't there, as happened last year, it would be Prince William and Camilla, Queen Consort, leading the celebrations. So in this first string of royals, Kate is number 4. She is not in any sense of the word leading the celebrations. What she is leading is the media coverage.
Yes, exactly. What she's leading is the best name for SEO to search engine optimization, what shows up when you search to bring in clicks and readership. Because if you read this article, it's really just a layout of how the day will proceed. It is nothing about how Catherine is leading this day, which would be unprecedented.
But how would you get people to click on an article about how Baroness Scotland will host King Charles and Queen Camilla for a Commonwealth Day reception where they will hear a commemorative song written by Andrew Lloyd Webber? Like, that doesn't sell papers. That doesn't get
Not
the clicks.
doing it. Sorry, Andrew. But we're on first name basis. The other thing that's interesting about this, just to provide some context, is this is Tatler, which is a highbrow
society paper.
Yeah, gossip kind of society paper. It's read though by everyone. Like that's the royal family is receiving
Tatler.
Tatler
is
juicy.
I love it.
It's great. But the other thing to remember is that this was the outlet that published the Catherine the Great article by Anna Pasternak, who I'd interviewed about it. And it had some stuff that the Waleses and the Middletons didn't quite, or Cambridge at the time, didn't quite enjoy. And stuff about just how her mother's kind of a social climber and how Kate is lovely because she's kind of a blank piece of paper that you can project anything onto. And that ended up being a big deal. They ended up William and Kate ended up taking Tatler into negotiations or, court. Well, it didn't, I don't think it went to court, but they brought their lawyers out and
there was basically a cease and desist.
Yeah, essentially.
I remember.
And a lot of that article was cut to remove the things that Kate and William didn't like, whether it wasn't true or not. It's like, okay, well, that was kind of an opinion and also things that people have said forever.
It's not about what was true or not true. Yeah. It was what was flattering or not flattering. And some of it was just, I didn't understand why they thought it wasn't flattering.
They cut anything that added any sort of color. And it was shocking because, oh, snap. I did not have enough coffee for that one. But I also think about that and the way that Kate is now leading this article and how much are they still trying to stay on the good side of the future king and queen after that disaster. So I think it's interesting that Tatler is leading with this kind of story about Kate.
I was a little surprised, but also not really surprised to see it.
Yeah.
Concerned, maybe. That's how people think of Kate. If she's there, she is leading the festivities.
But not her fashion, which is going to be interesting to see what they do when this is objectively a day that we talk about their clothes that they wear to this thing.
You don't step out in a peplum patterned Airedem skirt suit if you don't want the fashion to be a conversation piece, right? That's what she stepped out in for Commonwealth Day in 2023.
Put that on a pillow.
So cute. It wasn't very eloquent. No, the outfit was
I liked
cute.
it though. I liked it.
Thank you. So I just thought that was interesting and speaks volumes about the lack of lockstep, once again, between the heir and the current monarch and who is really leading the show here.
Yes. Nice one. I liked that. So speaking of another show, Meghan's show with Love Meghan debuted last week to lots of wild takes from the British media and things I could not have predicted, like fights over if it was elitist of Meghan to call spaghetti noodles. And if that's a thing Americans do, and that broke my brain so hard. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the show here and some of the things that we have learned about season 2, among other things. And then we will have a larger discussion and some just like behind the paywall stuff over on Patreon. So if you do want to check that out, go through the website, don't go through the Patreon app in the Apple App Store. You know what I mean?
The iOS store. Yeah. With Love, Meghan, I thought it was charming. However, critics were divided. Even though the show rose to be in the top 10, I think in 59 countries, it peaked at number 7 in the US last Friday. It got review bombed. It has currently 2.8 out of 10 stars on IMDb with 6.9 thousand ratings. I just have to say, like, if that's what you're doing with your spare time, can I delegate some tasks to you? Because clearly you have too much free time on your hands.
We could be doing other things. This is weird behavior at this point.
It's weird.
I wish everyone would pause.
I think we need to start. I don't want to shame people, but like, I think we need to acknowledge that this is weird and not normal. This is a woman who put on a hat that said, "Let us remain calm." And this is who you want to take down? Like, what?
At the very worst, she's sometimes a bit cringy and sometimes
corny, yes, elder
and
millennial.
Maybe, I do think of this whole kind of editing herself beforehand, just knowing. I mean, imagine if you know every single word and intonation is going to be scrutinized. It's really hard to act normal when there is an incredible amount of pressure on you. I mean, just insane amount of pressure.
But it doesn't matter what she does, let's be quite honest. It's just the fact that she is existing and exhibiting joy that rubs people the wrong way. But she got a season 2. Almost immediately, Netflix decided to announce that a season 2 of With Love, Meghan would be coming in the fall. It has been pre-filmed, so I would imagine that they batch filmed everything and just split it into chunks. This is a very, very common not just a filming tactic. Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon did this. They batch filmed so that things would be more continuous. But Netflix does this in order to encourage you to keep your subscription longer.
Yes.
It's also a marketing move for them. They did this with Bridgerton, splitting it into 2 halves. It's impacting me because remember I said I was going to cancel my Netflix subscription after watching?
Too.
Now there's a season 2 in the fall. So it's like, okay, well now I have to cancel and then like re-up in August or whatever. So
I also think this was smart in terms of, we talked about this, the store and selling things and how it kind of seemed weird that we wouldn't have products right as the show dropped. And I think if you
Which we still don't as we're recording.
We've seen what the products will be. And I think starting this newsletter that she started in conjunction with the brand and showing the different ways of using some of these items, I think will build some momentum as we move into the spring. And then as we move closer to the fall, I can see a real push for the must-have fall products that you're going to see in upcoming episodes of With Love, Meghan, or can you guess what she ends up making because she has like pumpkin puree or something in her hands. I don't know. But it does make sense from a marketing standpoint that, you're going to at least do a season 2 because of the store that Netflix also has vested interest in.
The show as it aired for season 1 is very like spring summer centric, I would say, with the flour sprinkles and the bubbly and the just barbecue food like the fried chicken and the tacos. I would wonder if season 2 is a little bit more focused on indoor recipes, even though she is living in California and can eat outdoors year round.
I bet you we will see more of that. We will see more holiday recipes, bringing in different cultures and just different traditions. I would love to see a winter-themed harvest basket. Give me that.
Oh, maybe some
ways
cookies.
To prep your house for guests, cookies.
She said in the first couple episodes she's not a keen baker, but she tried her hand at that raspberry sponge and it looked great. So, Meghan, what are you talking about?
It's people like that are like, I'm just not really good at that. And then you see what they're not good as.
The most beautiful final product.
Like, well, this looks great. I don't know. I found myself surprised by the show. I didn't expect it to be what it was, to include so many different elements of prep and making bath salts. And I learned that you're supposed to keep it in the little
we know, Meredith.
sachet, whatever thing.
Tea bag so that for was the bath.
Tea bag for the bath.
Tea.
I tried that out and she was right. So you can learn something. But there was just something so beautiful. And this is something I've tried to incorporate in my life over the past year anyway, is how do you make joy in everyday life? It doesn't need to be
big production.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be a big production. And you're allowed to just get flowers for the house because you want flowers for the house.
Absolutely.
Or to use your beautiful plates one night for dinner that are for special occasions just because it feels good. Just little touches that makes something special.
I think where critics of the show go so wrong is assuming that Meghan is telling you you have to do these things or else you don't love your family and friends. It's doing what you can do with what you have is the biggest takeaway I had from the show. So that's something I've already started integrating a little bit. I did a revamp of my kitchen. I moved stuff around so that I have a bigger workspace, and I'm trying to be more intentional about what meals I'm putting on the table for my fiance and myself, and just presenting something beautiful whenever I can. And it's already bringing me joy.
It's really lovely. Even, so I started doing this thing with my family where we do Friday night on a Wednesday night because I am divorced. And this is how one way to create family time on a night that we're just not busy. We don't have all these activities. And so we do some sort of really easy craft or play a game. And I pulled out these cute cherry plates. I got a 90% discount, and I just arranged some fruit and stuff in a fun way and delivered it to the table while we were working on everything. Of course, we ended up fighting over markers at 5 minutes in, but
of course,
Meghan didn't tell me what to do for that.
Well, we don't see Meghan's children devouring the fruit on the show, which I think is intentional too.
Yeah.
We see the prep, not necessarily the after.
Yeah. And so, but it's this way, and then we watch a movie together, and it's this way of creating a family moment and joy that I can't do every night. There are so many nights where it's just, I have the Trader Joe's chicken that you heat up in 2 minutes and whatever sides I can, throw together, and I'm slinging plates at the kids. But it's nice every once in a while to be able to slow down and do something like that. And I think that's generally what the show is about, that you can choose joy, and self-care is radical. It is resistance during this time.
With that said, I think we're going to pause here and take it over to Patreon. So if you would like to tune in for the rest of the conversation, including, I think we're going to get into a little bit about Meghan and her new identity, going by Meghan Sussex over there on Patreon as well. So we'll see you over on the Patreon at the $5 and up tier for that bonus episode. Otherwise, we'll see you after the break. And we are back from the Patreon, back from the ad break. One last note on the Meghan show. If you would like to see Meredith and I attempt a specific recipe, head on over to Patreon to weigh in.
Hey, Amanda, do you want to hear my transition into your topic for the day?
All right. Okay, give it to me.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay. Popular. I want to be popular.
10 out of 10.
Come on, that was good.
10 out of 10. So for a little segment we like to call, in our notes at least, Can't Stop Thinking About, I thought I would bring in some Pope commentary, because I talk about this on my art history podcast this month. Actually, I'm what I would call a recovering Catholic, but culturally and socially still very Catholic. So Pope Francis, if you have not heard, is in the hospital. His doctors say he's currently recovering from a chest infection, but he had a pretty bad bout of pneumonia. Even though he is showing slight improvements, he is delegating a lot of his duties and responsibilities to his aides and his cardinals. So there's a very real possibility that we will have to pivot quickly to something I like to call Pope Watch, which is the possibility of a new pope being elected very soon. So today I wanted to walk us through what that process looks like, walk Meredith through, you don't have to be a Catholic to understand this conversation.
I am not Catholic, so I am the not Catholic responding to this. Although I do want to posit something. Do you think the Pope got sick to try and encourage more conversation around Conclave for the Oscars?
No, I think the Pope got sick because Trisha Paytas is expecting her third child.
It's true. Every time Trisha Paytas gets pregnant, something happens in the world.
With a world leader. Yeah.
With a world leader.
So as of recording, Papa Francesco is currently slightly on the mend, but we just wanted to walk you through. If you have seen Conclave, you know what's about to be said here. Following the death or resignation of a pope, we do have to elect a new one. This is done through a papal conclave in which the College of Cardinals come together to elect the next head of the Catholic Church. This is also the head of state for Vatican City, which is a sovereign nation, technically. So it's still on theme if we're talking about royal media. And I mentioned that the Pope either dies or resigns. This is a very recent shift in thinking. Pope Francis might resign if his health gets too bad to where he can't do his responsibilities in the church anymore. Up until his predecessor, Pope Benedict XVI, a pope had not resigned in centuries. I think it's something like 1100 years or something like that. And Francis has repeatedly praised his predecessor, Pope Benedict, for his courage and humility in resigning in 2013. And he has said that Benedict opened the door for future popes to step down. So Francis himself revealed in 2022 that he wrote a letter of resignation as soon as he was elected pope, which lays out the circumstances that would lead to his resignation if medical problems impeded him from carrying out his duties. So that's a possibility here. Even if he does not pass away, we could have a papal conclave this year.
It's so weird when you're like, this man is doing all the right things. He's horrible for this job. It's like, you're doing all the right things, and I'm afraid that the next person won't, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I dig Pope Francis.
I love I think a lot of people love Pope Francis because he is, by Catholic terms, a very progressive pope. So he was the first non-European pope to be elected in hundreds of years. He is from South America. He was Argentinian. He used to be a nightclub bouncer, actually, is my favorite pope fact. But he was also from an order called the Jesuits, who are very focused on helping the poor, on humility. And he's also been able to address modern issues like climate change and LGBTQ plus issues.
It feels like he does more of the social gospel, because I was actually talking about this in my interview with Catherine Stewart about her book, Money, Lies, and God, about how the reason you see this split in who Catholics support is because there is this social gospel, and then there's this side that are looking to make political conservative change, and how often those two sides don't gel because of how they view Catholicism and their role in the world spreading Catholicism.
Yes. And, Catholics, we are not an evangelizing religion. We don't go out and try and convert people, which I think is very notable. American Catholicism irks me so bad because it's a Protestant thing to try and evangelize and spread the gospel as it relates to the Catholic Church. But you do have these theologians and these spiritual popes, and then you have the social justice popes. I would agree with you. There are kind of two camps. So I wanted to talk about some of they're not candidates necessarily, but the likely names that are going to be in conversation if and when a conclave is called.
So do they do kind of, like an Oscars campaign? Do they do billboards in Vatican City? Like, Jose is the man. Here's, how do they come up with these names?
You're not supposed to. Theoretically, it is supposed to be a spiritual process. And if you are one of the electors in the conclave, you are supposed to kind of be praying and hoping that the Holy Spirit basically shows you who is going to be the next pope. As of January 2025, the electors consist of 138 out of the 252 total cardinals. So that is everyone under the age of 80, all men, of course. These are the 138 people who can take part in the election, which is secret. It's done by secret ballot. It takes place in the Sistine Chapel. If you've seen Conclave, you know how this goes.
Love it.
So I found some statistics about the conclave, too, that I thought were interesting. 110, so 79% of the 138 electors in the next conclave were put in office, essentially, by Francis. So essentially, he has packed the conclave.
Yes.
Also, I found interesting, the total number of electors is technically supposed to be capped at 120, but see conclaves go over that number all the time. So it's not odd necessarily that we're over the number. It's just technically not how it's supposed to be done on paper. Francis also, quote unquote, packed the College of Cardinals by passing over very large sections of the church. We call them archdioceses, where the cardinals would be in charge. He has passed over places like Los Angeles, Venice, and Milan in favor of smaller communities. So the people he has made cardinals reflect more of a concern for the people, and notably the poor is who kind of always gets brought up in this conversation. Why does the Catholic Church,
why do they feel more progressive than America right now?
Well, we'll talk about that. The result of this conclave will be very different from the one that elected Francis. It will be less Italian, less European, and less curial, so it's going to have more of a focus on social issues, I think. But it will also be more Asian and African. The concentration of, European cardinals has gone down. We've put a lot more men in power in Asia and Africa. So those demographic shifts will be represented. However, the men who are in the running, so I say in the running loosely because, to your point, there is not a formal election campaign. You're not really supposed to openly campaign for yourself. It is kind of what we see in Conclave, where it's conversations that happen between little factions. It is a highly political process. And the men who are in the conclave, they do get isolated from the outside world. They take an oath of secrecy, so we never know what goes on in these conclaves. The voting is completely secret. And the votes, I don't think that they debate openly. I think it's just you go in for a round of voting, you count the ballots, you announce the winners, you need a 2/3 majority. And if no one gets the 2/3 majority, you do another vote. And it kind of just narrows down that way.
That is so interesting. I'm also thinking that a really good game could be a Traitors-esque game, but it's the conclave. Wouldn't that be awesome?
We for Christmas, I got Christmas crackers that were Traitors branded, and we played the Traitors at the table. It was so fun.
That's amazing.
I had to import them from England, but this was before the tariffs. So yeah, if we pick a pope, you see white smoke out of this chimney. If we do not pick a pope, you see black smoke because we burn the ballots after every vote. I know it's very like shady and secret.
Well, I love it. It's so camp.
It is very camp. Oh my gosh, that's the thing about Conclave. Like, it really does show the drama, like the high drama of the Catholic Church. Take your sensitive ass back to American Protestantism if you don't want the drama. So there are some drama queens who are considered front runners to be the next pope. I have broken them up into the liberals, the moderates, and the conservatives.
Yes.
So the favorite of Pope Francis, allegedly, is a man named Cardinal Matteo Zuppi. He is 69, and he was made a cardinal by Pope Francis in 2019. He has been sent on a number of diplomatic trips by Francis, including a peace mission to Ukraine. So that could be very topical if this is a concern as the conclave is assembling. He also has positive views of the LGBTQ plus community. He wrote an essay in 2018 that it was useful for encouraging dialogue as well as reciprocal knowledge and understanding in terms of having like a new approach to our LGBT brothers and sisters. So love that.
Okay.
The other more liberal frontrunner is Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, Tagle. He is the 7th Filipino cardinal in history. So this would make him the first Asian pope if he were to be elected. He typically shows very left-leaning politics, similar to Pope Francis, and he has criticized the church's attitude and language towards LGBTQ plus people, unwed mothers, and divorced or remarried Catholics. There's going to be a lot of like really archaic attitudes towards divorced people in these bios because it's a hot button issue still for the Catholic
really is.
Church.
I didn't realize until I spoke with a friend that you can still have a marriage annulled in the Catholic Church, even if it's been years, if some vow that you've taken has been broken or wasn't faithfully attempted, like having children or something like that, and that you can then, because otherwise you can't get married in the Catholic Church again.
It's legit. Like Shane and I, when we were considering for our wedding, were we going to do it? Because I'm Catholic and he's not. You know, they were going to let us get married in the Catholic Church because he was baptized. He was some non-denominational form of Christianity.
They'll take in any baptism, though. I did learn that.
Yes. They'll take any baptism. You have to raise your children Catholic and you have to kind of commit to being there every Sunday. And I was just like, that's not realistic for us. So sorry. But at least I'm not divorced. We still have annulments. And like, that's what you go for if you're Catholic and you want to dissolve a marriage. Like the Henry VIII ass, like annulment is still a topic of conversation.
So
but yes, Cardinal Tagle said in 2015 that he believes many people who belonged to those groups, the divorced, the unwed mothers, and the gay, were branded, and that led to their isolation from wider society. So he sees this as an issue we need to reconcile. So those are the two liberal frontrunners. There are some who I would call moderates. The favorite currently, and this is not just me saying based on observation, this is a topic of bookmakers. Okay, there is betting on who is going to be the next pope. The current frontrunner, 4-1, is Cardinal.
That seems antithetical to Catholicism. Okay.
Listen, yeah, my Catholic dad does not gamble, but yeah, 4-1, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, 70 years old, from Veneto. So he is Italian. He has been the Vatican's Secretary of State since 2013. So he's the highest ranking cardinal currently in the conclave. If that happens this year, he's the Ralph Fiennes. He has been long considered a sensible, moderate figure within the church and recently gave an interview where he talked about like geopolitical issues and said, kind of pointedly, I think, everyone can contribute to peace, but solutions must never be pursued through unilateral impositions that risk trampling on the rights of entire peoples. Otherwise, there will never be a just and lasting peace. And again, that religion of social justice, like I think it is the Catholics at the end of the day. So
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a pretty good politician answer, to be honest.
It is. So that's why he's in with the moderates. Yes. Now, a moderate skewing a little bit more conservative is also a front runner. His name is Cardinal Peter Turkson. He is 73 from Ghana, so he would be the church's first Black pope if he were elected. He was also the favorite back in 2013 when Pope Francis ended up being elected. He is described as a tech-savvy polyglot who once played in a funk band.
Oh, is he on King Charles's list of favorite music? I want to know.
So the African church, that's an area we've been seeing a lot of expansion in terms of the Catholic Church kind of spreading and gaining footholds. And the issues in Africa are very different than they are in Europe and America, I will say. A lot of the church's focus in Africa is on the AIDS crisis still, on LGBTQ plus rights. And Peter Turkson is a man whose views on the queer community used to be very extreme. They have been softening, and that is seen as an attempt to win favor with the more liberal side of the conclave. He has pointed out, though, that the stigmatization of homosexuality in Africa is traditional, and just, you need to respect our culture. So, that's not great. But he would be the first African pope since the 5th century. So,
okay.
Yeah. Then you have the conservatives. There are quite a few of them. There's one from Wisconsin who is called Cardinal Raymond Leo Burke. He has called the church's new language around contraception, civil marriages, and gay people objectionable. And he said that Catholic politicians who support legalized abortion, like Joe Biden, should not be able to receive communion.
Not that great. Guy. Also, not to mention how abortion is a political issue that they've tied to religion, especially Catholicism. And how it's really not even something in the Bible that's covered. I don't know the exact language to it. It's basically bullshit. And so I don't want this guy to win.
No, there's a lot we could unpack here with the abortion mention specifically, because this is one of the reasons I don't necessarily go to church that much anymore, because they would hand out around elections pro-life voter guides, which of course were just the Republican candidates. So you are putting your tax exempt status in jeopardy in my mind there by handing that out, but apparently not in someone like Cardinal Raymond Burke's mind. And then finally, we have Robert Serra, who is 77 from Guinea. I hate this guy. I'm going to be so honest with you. Again, he would be one of the first African popes since the 5th century, the first Black pope. He is seen as, quote, part of the loyal opposition to Pope Francis. And I just really hate him because everyone loves Pope Francis. For example, he was reluctant to publish the Pope's decree that allowed, you ready for this? Washing the feet of women on Holy Thursday. So in advance of Easter, there's this tradition, it recreates the Last Supper, where the priest will wash the feet of people from the church. This guy, Cardinal Serra, was reluctant to let women have their feet washed by a priest. Yeah.
This sounds too much like a very stupid thing that Republicans, like a culture issue that Republicans get stuck on and run with.
I'm sorry, you mentioned cultural issues. He has also made comments in support of bathroom bills.
Nope, get rid of him. Get rid of him.
Yep.
He's going to have a photo with Nancy Mace at some point. I'm not here for it.
It's weird. His blurb is the longest in my notes. I will just also say he has weird attitudes about immigrants and refugees. He has said that while every migrant must be respected, the situation becomes more complex if they are of another culture. Quote, the ideology of liberal individualism promotes a mixing that is designed to erode the natural borders of homelands and cultures and leads to a post-national and one-dimensional world where the only things that matter are consumption and production. A lot going on there.
How is this man Catholic? Does he know about Jesus? He's pretty big in that book.
Again, it's the African church. There are a lot of traditionalist messages that are key to the church being so successful in Africa. Needless to say, Cardinal Serra is also anti-LGBTQ. He has said some really heinous stuff. He said, what comes from the enemy cannot and must not be assimilated. What Nazi fascism and communism were in the 20th century, Western homosexual and abortion ideologies and Islamic fanaticism are today. So I really hope it's not this guy, but he is always named, I think, among the front runners because it would be very progressive to have the first Black pope. But it's what if the Black pope really sucks?
Yeah, it's like what they're like, why aren't you cheering that this Black individual is put into a position of power in the Trump administration? And it's because it's about him or her upholding regressive viewpoints. It doesn't actually matter that he's a person of color in this situation. It's like, no, it's just upholding patriarchal white standards. So
exactly. And the thing I think it's important for us to have this conversation, A, before the Pope has died and the election is happening. B, even if you're not Catholic, because any appointment to the papacy does send a message about the direction the church is taking. And I think the Catholic Church, spiritually, socially, they do still have a lot of cultural weight in these conversations. Think about back when Francis was elected. This was 2013. The church was knee deep in sexual scandals. Pope Benedict XVI, he specifically cited his age and his failing health. He was going blind as his reason to step down. But there's also acknowledgement. Benedict is one of those spiritual popes. He kind of didn't feel equipped to address these huge scandals that were breaking in 2013. Either he wasn't equipped to do so, he didn't have the spoons, or he just didn't want to. Those are the two schools.
So they brought in a nightclub bouncer, which makes sense.
Well, yes. And Pope Francis, like I said, he was a Jesuit, which is a religious order who is they're famously known for being just very selfless, very concerned with uplifting the poor and the needy. And so that spoke volumes about the direction the church wanted to be seen as taking. But I think with our current culture wars, what we do now will speak volumes about how we expect those culture wars to go.
Yeah. Not that you're betting or anything.
I'm not betting.
Okay, but who's the traitor? I'm just kidding. Okay, who are your top two, or who's your think they're going to take it and who I want to take it?
Okay, so I want Cardinal Luis Tagle, the Filipino cardinal. He is the one who has been very open-armed, welcoming to gay people, unwed mothers, and divorcees. But I think it might be Parolin, he's kind of handpicked by Francis. And if the conclave packing works, he, I think, will take it. Again, it's not supposed to be a political process. You're probably also not supposed to bet on it. But again, 4-1 says Parolin right now. And this is before this is even an issue. So bookmakers also believe there's a 50% chance the next pope will choose the name Francis II. If you're a betting
I dig
man.
that. Can I give as a non-Catholic who has no say in this?
Yes,
okay,
please.
Here's what I
say
think.
Either.
I know, but I feel like I should not be commenting. Okay, but now I will. Cardinal Matteo Zuppi?
Mm-hmm.
Zuppi? Okay, I think he is my number one.
Okay.
Because I think especially right now as we're seeing America pulling out of being a leader in terms of peace and keeping that up, I think someone who has been sent on diplomatic missions and stuff for peace and thinking of filling that vacuum that might be left by America, I could see a world where you'd want to have that person in power. And I just think he kind of has a nice balance of that, the diplomacy, and also human rights. And who I think is going to win, like you, is Cardinal Parolin, who, again, Secretary of State. He's a little more moderate, which I think kind of makes both sides happy. He is kind of seems like in terms of pendulum swings in political realms, right? With far-right candidates winning and things like that. Sort of this, a little more of a happy medium, a pendulum swing back to some sort of center, while still potentially being more progressively minded, but strategic in how he positions it.
Right. And remember, when we say progressive, this is still the Catholic Church.
Yeah, we're
Pope Francis. Pope Francis made
He's
it
not
possible.
burning bras.
Right. He said recently, clergy members can bless same-sex couples. They can't perform a rite of marriage, but they can give them, I think it's spontaneous blessings. That is something that his conservative counterparts have been very against. But the pendulum here is already on the conservative side. But I would just say, too, it really depends when this conclave takes place, I think, what the decision will end up being.
Point.
Who knows? Pope Francis could hang on. He could resign tomorrow. We don't know.
Okay, Pope Watch has officially begun.
Pope Watch, soft watch.
I will let you know the next time Prince Edward speaks to an animal, a reptile that radicalizes him. And
Perfect.
Amanda will let you know the updates
Pope Watch.
on Pope Watch. They're both very important.
If you haven't gone and watched Conclave, this is my second episode in a row, I think, where I've plugged the movie. But it does paint a picture of how the outside world does impact what goes on in these decision-making processes. And in that movie, something does punch through the bubble. And that, I think, impacts the decision that gets made in the end. So go watch that movie if you're antsy for Pope Watch to begin.
I know. I need to. I have only watched The Substance. Conclave is right up my alley. So
you'll love it. You will love it.
I need to check that out. So wrapping things up, we have to say thank you to our Patreon press secretaries who are holding down the fort, and we are ready with our harvest baskets in hand to send to them. Sorry, we don't know how to do that. Our handwriting is not Meghan's either. Molly White and Nikki Ray, thank you so much for the additional support. Remember, our top 2 tiers, you get shout outs, and we make increasingly bizarre stories about your roles for us. So I'm sure it's a delightful surprise. And also, I feel like I'm learning something about what we're doing in our outro. Amanda, are we about to be King Charles?
Oh, no, I wrote a little blurb for our press secretaries. I was just going to say, I know it's tough because Meredith and I have dueling music tastes. We don't always overlap. So I know it's tough to compile a playlist to send to the Apple Music people, but you're doing a great job.
I was like, did we get a deal that I didn't know about? I love that. But also, if you want an off with their headlines, what Meredith and Amanda listen to get ready for the show, that actually could be a fun idea. Just different music we love.
A With Love Meghan inspired playlist, and Lucy on the Ground shared it on her Instagram story.
Girl.
So it's inspired by the series, not necessarily music from, but I've been loving making playlists as like a self-care activity.
Yeah, let us know if that would bring you joy, because there'll be some weird stuff on it. There's going to be a show tune. Just know it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for listening. Let's hope that Pope Watch 2025 does not kick off too soon, because we love Papa Francesco over here.
Word up.
See you in the next one.
Bye.